Afternoon, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Susan Shindler and Coding as a Second Career. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Susan. I work for a diversity data company called PIC. We use algorithms and data analysis to help organizations improve diversity. And I'm here to talk about my path to coding, somewhat later, non-traditionally. This story starts back in 1995 when I was 17. I don't know if they had glamour shots here, but this was like all the rage when I was in high school. I didn't fit any label of a stereotypical high school student. I played sports, but I wasn't a jock. I got straight A's, but I was not a nerd. I loved math, loved science. I even programmed a game on my graphing calculator for fun, so computer science might have been a logical, natural progression for me, but something stopped me. And that something was the image of computer scientists. What was that image back in the 90s? Well, take these two computer science majors in Revenge of the Nerds, or the staff of Initech of Office Space, or Bill Gates himself. So what do these people have in common? That is one thing, yes. They fit a certain mold, and I didn't really fit that mold. And that ultimately, I didn't see myself in computer science because I didn't see people like me there. And that ultimately led me to choose to major in university in economics so that I could be just like fierce Melanie Griffith in Working Girl, rather than computer science, so I didn't have to be like the weird agoraphobic Sandra Bullock in The Net. And that major in economics led me to a career in business. I worked in consulting, marketing. I spent a long time in retail across a number of different functional areas: marketing, merchandising, HR, finance. I went to business school, and through all of that, I learned a lot of really valuable foundational skills around communication, data analysis, project management, skills that have helped in every job I've ever done, and real life as well. It's hard to get two kids ready for school in the morning without like professional project management experience. Then I had an opportunity to go work for my best friend who was starting her own business. So I went to work for a teeny startup called Wellist, and they are a healthcare tech company that has a social mission to improve the patient experience. And through that tiny company, I had exposure to tech for the first time without feeling like an outsider to it. I learned what sprints were and stacks, Ruby on Rails, difference between front-end and back-end development, and I even built some web pages myself using Squarespace. So it was this exposure to tech that gave me a little bit of insight that it wasn't so foreign, it wasn't so weird. So there I was working at Wellist in Boston when my British husband got the opportunity through his job to relocate back to his homeland. So 2 years ago, we moved to London, and suddenly I was open to the idea of working in tech in a way that I hadn't been in the previous 15 years. And that's when I came across PIC. I went to a networking event for startups as a way to see what was out there, to dip my toe in the water getting back into the job market. But I met Henry, who's sitting over here, very persuasive. And he's the founder of PIC. And I ended up working somewhere doing something that I never would have dreamed of 2 years before that. So with no expertise in code at all to start with, how did I slowly start to build that? The first thing I used, the primary resource, is Stack Overflow. It is a font of information. Every question that I've ever had, I can do a Google search, and it comes up with an answer. I can find the code I need, or close enough that I could sort of figure it out myself. It works really well for more simple questions like, how do I change this column header, or how do I filter this data frame? But it's always my first stop. Whenever I get stuck, that's where I go. The second method is paired programming. So what I do is I contact an experienced person on Upwork, get them on the phone, share my screen with them, and then have them walk me through what I'm trying to do. This works a lot better for more complicated things, so learning how to build and define functions. This is how I learned that. I use Jupyter Notebooks. They are so accessible to novices, really user-friendly, and enable me to not just build, but test and understand what I've done through that. So with a lot of trial and error, practice, I've slowly learned a bit of Python, especially pandas, NumPy, and matplotlib, but there have been others as well. Pandas is the best thing ever. And I still have a long way to go. I mean, I've only been at this a little over a year, but a year ago I was at PYCON, sitting in the audience, completely confused. This year it's been a bit better. I understand a little bit more about what's going on. So the difference between where I was a year ago and where I am now is tremendous. I'm even doing a talk, my first one. So what I've learned through this process are two things. The first is that your career does not have to be a straight line. What you decide you want to do at 17 does not have to determine your entire life through retirement. The most rewarding careers zigzag, and you can constantly be learning new things and challenging yourself, and that is incredibly rewarding. So don't be afraid to pivot, change, do something totally new. The second thing is you don't have to be a computer science major to get into coding. You don't have to have a degree. I know Christian's talk earlier stressed that as well. I think you need three things. The first is an analytical mindset. So being detail-oriented, being able to solve problems methodically. The second is an eagerness to learn and being open to learning in different ways, trying new things. And the third, a willingness to fail, making a lot of mistakes and being okay with that. So trying and trying and trying again, getting frustrated and not letting it get you down. So if I were 18 now, with the benefit of hindsight, would I make the same choices? I think the answer is probably yes, because the image of tech hasn't changed that much in 20 years. I want to play a little video. It's not playing. Yeah.
What? What? You listen to me, you muscle-bound, handsome Adonis. Tech is reserved for people like me, okay? The freaks, the weirdos, the misfits, the geeks, the dweebs, the dorks. Not you.
So this was an episode of Silicon Valley, which I love, by the way, and everybody should watch it. That was just aired last year. So there's still a lot of work that can be done to improve diversity in the tech industry. It really matters. Kids need to see people like them in an industry, in a career, to feel that it's open to them. And there is a lot we can do. It matters tremendously. So I have a question for all of you. What would persuade kids who don't fit the mold of a programmer to pursue a career in tech or coding? So Christian has a mic, so you can raise your hand if anybody's got any suggestions.
Hi. First of all, I don't believe in feed the mold thing. I think that programming is for everyone, and it's very accessible. And nowadays, it's quite easy. It's not like it was 20 years before, because nowadays we have these amazing things like Python language, Flask, like a lot of stuff that's easy to start with. And like 20, 30 years ago, they had like C and assembly. Of course, how do you do that? So I think that for kids, there are plenty of things that they can start with. And it's just, I think it's quite easy for them. Because nowadays, we have so many technologies.
I would probably suggest that trying to build up their confidence to believe in themselves over the mold as such. That could apply to any career, really. So you don't have to fit a mold of being an accountant or being a whole range of different things. That if they believe that they can make a difference, that might help in this case.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you completely that it's not just this industry. I mean, when I was in consulting, that was not to generalize, but a male-dominated field. Working in HR and marketing, those are female-dominated fields. No matter where you go, it does feel like there's, a dominant group, and it is important to continuously fight against that. This one back there.
Hello. I've only recently gotten back into programming after being put off it at school, and I think you fit the mold analogy there. It's obviously going to be easier for someone who does fit the mold to keep going through that adversity, but I think really the thing that would help more than anything else is to give people confidence that they can do it, and that, in my opinion, comes from manageable projects that are fun for people to do. And I think, to be honest, if you talk to people who haven't got any knowledge about programming, about how they should get into programming, their ideas of what they should do are completely wrong. They think that they have to learn everything from how assembly code all the way up to, oh, then I can learn some JavaScript and Python, rather than going, oh, I can jump into this and do something real straight away. So I think by encouraging everyone to actually do something manageable with a reward at the end of it that they can see and touch or use, that would push everyone to get into programming better.
Christian, there's a couple more over there.
Hi, I think it starts really young. I mean, the characters they see on CBeebies, or you can look on programs and female role models on that 4 and 5-year-olds are watching, are doing the flowery things, and then you get the Bob the Builder, and you have a very stereotypical roles in children's television. Now, CBBC is doing an awful lot better now, but I think that is what is going to persuade kids that they do fit the mold of a programmer, if they see the girl characters using computers at a very young age, that it becomes natural to them to imagine themselves doing a similar job.
Yeah, diverse role models, and it's not just women, but as diverse as possible, as representative of the general population as possible.
I saw a talk the other day that Claire Witcher gave, and she was talking about showing what the outcomes can be, as opposed to just here's some code and the only real outcome is some code. Actually showing, like, there's loads of maker stuff, like what are things that you can make, and you can make them not just appeal to stereotypical boys, but you can do some like more feminine type projects as well.
All right, and we have time for one more. Anyone else? All right. So, I mean, I do think it's fitting that my work is around improving diversity, because it's so important for there to be a diverse range of role models. So, I heard a couple of people talk about building confidence. I think that's a great way, getting exposure to projects that they can do and get through that do cool, interesting things that are meaningful to them. So I had a couple of other ideas of how you could make a difference. The first, inspire others to get involved. So mentor someone in your life, tell them what you do, what you love about it, get them excited about the prospect, the idea. Second, hire from non-traditional backgrounds. Be open to the idea of hiring someone who's analytical and then training them on the code specifically. Third, break those stereotypes. There's a lot of diversity that already exists. Highlight it. Celebrate everyone and everything at your organizations that don't fit the mold. Show all of the different variations and people who are there. So that's sort of the end of my talk, but I have time for questions if anyone has any questions.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I'm just wondering, so yeah, as a girl, it's quite uncommon that there's a lot of girls around me, obviously. And I always struggle with, I really want to promote this for women, for younger girls, for, I don't know, black people, for minorities, really. But at the same time, I don't want to be that token girl. And how do you feel about it? How do you?
I think the reason that having role models are so important is because not everybody has the appetite to be Jackie Robinson. Not everybody wants to be the groundbreaker, the first, the only, the token. But there do have to be people that do that, because until there's a Jackie Robinson, there's a whole bunch of other people that are never gonna start. So I guess some of the girls need to take one for the team and be the Jackie Robinson. Sorry, I hope everybody got the baseball reference. I realize that I'm American and I don't know who the cricket equivalent is.
I just wanted to ask a question. Hopefully I can do this diplomatically, but thinking about the gender balance in board level appointments, and I don't want this to sound like it's a personal thing about you, but I happen to notice that you're a COO. It seems to me there's almost like a subtle sexism that COO seems to be the one area where women do seem to be making a lot more progress. Do you think, firstly, do you think that there is any truth in that, and do you see a way of getting beyond that so that CEOs or CFOs or CIOs could be well represented?
Okay, I'm going to break that into two pieces. The first is that Henry and I are the only two people at the company right now. So there's the CEO who's the founder, and then there's me who sort of does everything else that needs to be done. I do happen to, I think when I went to that networking event, I showed up and I said, I like to get stuff done. I like to take other people's vision and make it work. That's my strength. So I don't have the vision. I have no interest in being a CEO. COO is just comfortably where I would want to work my way up to, but I also have realized that through startups, there's not the same corporate ladder that you're building. It's much more flat, much more flexible. Separating that personal from just the more broad industry. It's sort of the same story of there needs to be more women making it to the highest levels. Staples, one of the companies that I spent a long time working for, had a founder, the CEO, the next CEO for 15 years, and then a woman that had been working her way, really she'd been groomed to be the next CEO. Staples sort of fell apart, was acquired by private equity, and she was almost immediately fired. She lasted as CEO for less than a year. And I just think that's the biggest travesty, because she had earned it. She was great. And they brought in some dude from Coke. So there's still a lot that can be done to open those board level positions for women. And I don't have the answer to that. Okay, I think we have A couple more questions?
Thank you. Did you have to deal with any gatekeeping, like people saying if you don't write code, then you're not really in tech, that sort of thing?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I'm not sure I understood the question.
So I was just wondering if you had to deal with any people who were trying to be gatekeepers, like for example, when you work as a sysadmin, if you don't write code, the developers kind of go, well, you're not really relevant to the product because we're the people doing the work. There are attitudes like that.
I haven't experienced that personally. You know, at Wellness, the head of the you know, the head engineer, he was one of my best friends, and he was really committed to diversity on his team. So he was always open, and you know, and he's one of the ones that gave me exposure to all of that stuff. You know, and Henry has been incredibly supportive of me just learning as I go, and you know, I think we sort of found each other. Of, you know, I was looking for part-time mom hours, and he couldn't afford a full-time engineer. So, you know, so it's worked out really well. I haven't experienced that personally, but I also know that if I were at a bigger company with a more entrenched tech department, engineering department, that it might be a different story.
Hi, just a statement really. So I come from a material sciences background, and one of the problems in getting women into our sector and coding as well is that they don't have the university degree. And the problem with that is that a lot of the university degrees won't take people if they haven't done physics at A level. So I think the focus needs to be put on women of 16 and 17 years old to get them taking that A level to open that first step so that the whole chain can come through. So just to say, A-level physics is important. Yeah, thank you. No, sorry, I was just making a statement.
Just wondering, as coming from the US and now being in the UK and having perhaps like an outsider's perspective on our culture, are there any, well, one, is the problem kind of different in the US and the UK, and or are there kind of cultural differences that make it, that exacerbate it or make it worse, or do we have particular blind spots as British people that like we might not notice that, you know, make it more, like the class system or something, make it harder? Have you got any reflections on that?
I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is the education system and the difference between, so the US system, you have a much broader education. So, you know, you take all of the classes all the way through high school, and even when you pick a major in college, you're not picking it till your second year, and you're still taking lots of other classes and lots of other courses. Whereas here, you narrow down to 3 A levels at age 16, and it does determine, like there's a whole domino effect of if you don't take physics, then you don't get to do material science, and then you can't be a material scientist. So I think here you're sort of pigeonholed a lot sooner. And so I don't know how to counteract that. I mean, I think in my case, when I was 17, I probably would have picked the A levels that would have led me in the tech direction rather than leaving myself totally open for as long as I had and then picking economics when I got tired of other things. So, yeah, I guess I don't, that's the biggest difference that I've noticed. Less culturally and more structurally.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.